The defense went up there before she took the stand to try to say she is irrelevant. Her testimony is irrelevant. And certainly any descriptions of the alleged interlude are irrelevant. And the prosecution said, no, we need to establish it. We have to show that sex took place. And the judge said, okay. So then she starts talking about how they had conversations about STDs in the porn industry. She actually testified and was allowed to that he didn't wear a condom. Okay, so the jury's now heard that he's having an extramarital affair with a porn star without wearing a condom. How is that, again, relevant to the core issue of campaign finance violations or falsifying business records? And she goes on and on about the details of the missionary. Why do we know it was missionary, right? Like all this stuff she got in without much of a fight, right? The defense stood up here or there, but not that much because they'd just been overruled at the beginning of her testimony. And you and I both know you don't want to look like it's hurting me. You know, when you've already been ruled against privately by the judge and you know all this stuff is coming in, you don't stand on every question because you're just telegraphing to the jury, this shit is really hurting me. So they pick their places to object. Then they have a sidebar and the judge is like, this is not appropriate testimony. I expected more objections from the defense. He's blaming them for the situation he created.
Well, he's putting them between a rock and a hard place because if you don't object, you can waive the error for appeal. You can be deemed to have not objected timely. They should have asked for like a continuing objection, something like that. Hopefully everything that was said at sidebar was taken down and there's no waiver issues. But apparently Judge Merchan he's not been reading his slip opinions because I think he failed to read that the appeals court in New York has reversed one of his colleagues for allowing prosecutors to put in too much irrelevant stuff and to slime Harvey Weinstein to the point that it created an unfair trial. And of course, that case was recently reversed. Judge Merchan would do well to take a lesson from that. This testimony we've said it's irrelevant, and I don't know any other way to say it other than it's now cumulative. It's the kind of evidence that even if it were relevant to one of the issues, it's so unfairly prejudicial to the defense that it becomes otherwise inadmissible. Now, the only thing I think that you can say about this testimony that might help Donald Trump, one of the points that he is making, and I think he's doing a good job making it through his counsel, is that any payments, and by the way, I'm not going to call them hush money because that implies there's something sinister, but the media will call it a hush money payment. His purpose in doing that is not for benefiting his campaign. Now we see that he could have other non-related purposes like, to avoid embarrassment and also for the sake of his spouse and any number in his business enterprises, things that are unrelated to the campaign. So this, I think, helps him make that argument that even if there was anything wrong with it, it wasn't for the purpose of benefiting the campaign. And that is the so-called other crime that the now bootstrapped.
Well, wait a minute, because on that front, she testified that he did not ask her to keep it quiet. The prosecution brought out testimony from Stormy that Trump did not say, don't tell anyone at any point or after it happened, immediately after it happened. And they wanted to bring that out to suggest Trump didn't want to shut her up until he ran for office.
Well, there's also, they have to bring that out because she's now intimating through her testimony, I think, that perhaps somehow this was something less than fully consensual. I think that's the sinister motive behind Alvin Bragg's testimony. I think he knew good and well what she was going to say about possibly blacking out and all that sort of thing, because that sort of the message to the jury that he's a real sinister and evil person. To me, that was the real purpose of this testimony.
That, I mean,
Megyn,
it's truly shocking. Yeah, go ahead, Julian.
Yeah. So again, I take Phil's point on the NDA hush money semantic issue, but you said that the prosecutors said they needed to establish that sex occurred. That's just wrong as a matter of law. Whether or not sex occurred, there was an NDA, and the only issue before the court is whether the NDA was misreported on the business records. And I'm not sure, by the way, calling an NDA a legal expense is a misreporting. There's no
I'm
clear
not either.
guidance in New York on that. So that's one point. So whether they had sex is completely irrelevant. The only question is whether there was an NDA that was misreported on business records and whether there was a federal crime that misreporting was furthering. And whether, you want to subjectively say one of the purposes, to Phil's point, was not reporting it on federal campaign records. If you read the rules, the FEC rules, it's clear that an NDA is not considered a reportable campaign expenditure.
We talked about that on the phone. It's what matters is the nature of the expenditure, not the subjective motivation in the payor's mind.
Correct, but even if it was, it wouldn't have been reportable till 2017, so it couldn't have been a
when he was already in
2016 election. When he was already in office, and even if it was, Bragg doesn't have jurisdiction to enforce that. So this case has become a joke. I mean, this is embarrassing. This is exactly what the left argued during the Bill Clinton and other prosecutions.
Well, but wait, we know that, but that's like the sweeping condemnations are interesting, but I want to stay to the specifics because we got a lot of them to get through today.
Okay.
And that brings me to Stormy's claim. This is another area in which they tried to ding her up on cross. She claimed that she was threatened. So the prosecution's trying to say you came forward or you did not come forward, right? You did not come forward to say anything about this until you decided to shake down Donald Trump. That's what you wanted to do, shake him down. And she's like, no, the reason I didn't come forward earlier is because I was threatened. I was in a parking lot years ago, like after it happened, closer in time to when it happened. And a man came up to me in a parking lot when I was in Las Vegas with my daughter, and he threatened me that if I told people I was going to be in some sort of trouble. And she says that she didn't report it because it would have been upsetting to the person she was in a relationship with at the time. Now, the New York Times reports that this is an account she never told some of the people who worked closely with her on the NDA. And she first revealed it in that 60 Minutes interview in 2018. All right. So now in 2018, she for the first time says the reason I haven't come forward until now, 12 years after the act by that point, was because somebody threatened me. And the prosecution got all over her. Actually, wait, we have a soundbite of what she told Anderson Cooper in 2018 about what she did right after this alleged scary parking lot threat.
And a guy walked up on me and said to me, leave Trump alone, forget the story. And then he leaned around and looked at my daughter and said, it's a beautiful little girl. It'd be a shame if something happened to her mom. And then he was gone. I was rattled. I remember going into the workout class and my hands were shaking so much I was afraid I was going to drop her.
Did you go to the police?
No.
Why?
Because I was scared.
Okay. So back then, she says, I'm rattled. And the prosecution gets up in her grill and says, in your book, you write that you went to an exercise class after this alleged threat. So you went to an exercise class, and the defense is trying to suggest she made up the whole thing to explain why she didn't come forward earlier. The question by the defense counsel was, you were using it as an excuse to lie. You used this supposed threat as an excuse for why you did not talk publicly. She said, the man who allegedly threatened you doesn't exist, does he? I thought that was actually quite effective, because who goes into an exercise class right after they've been threatened? Their life has been threatened if they reveal that they've had sex with Donald Trump.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that it just defies common sense. It defies belief. It's the kind of thing that there's no way that it's ever going to be able to be conclusively proven one way or the other. And it's the kind of thing, if you like Donald Trump, or you're, or at least not opposed to the man, you might tend to say, well, she's lying. But on the other hand, if you just can't see past your visceral hatred for the defendant, you absolutely believe that is the gospel truth. And so it's easy for the kind of thing for a witness to just come out and say, because there's no a way to prove or disprove it. We're not going to hear from anybody else that was there. We're not going to see any security camera videos from wherever it was. There's no police reports. There's no investigation. It's easy to fabricate and difficult to disprove. It's the kind of thing that all the defense lawyer can do is ask the question the way that he asked it and leave it there, because there's no way to prove it through any kind of intrinsic facts otherwise.
So they're just trying to chip away at her credibility, ding her up and ding her up. And Julian, they did that by getting her in part to admit she hates Donald Trump. She would love to see him incarcerated. And also she admitted on the stand that even though she's been ordered by a federal judge to pay his attorney's costs in connection with the defamation suit she brought against him and lost, she won't pay it. It's some, I think, $500,000. And she said on cross, I'm not going to pay it. I don't care. She admitted that she had previously said she'll never pay it and she doesn't care about the court order. So this jury is hearing she'll defy a court order to pay what she owes when it comes to Donald Trump. She's dying to see him incarcerated and she hates him. And they have more than enough basis to disregard every word she has said. For that reason alone, never mind the many inconsistencies we just went through, many of which they heard about.